One day he pulled out to go to work, and I said, I make a joke. He pulled out and drove away. I pulled up my budget rental truck, you know, got my stuff moved out, got the dog, and before he came back, I was gone.
Welcome to Zestful Aging, where I talk with fascinating, talented, and inspiring guests who reflect on the adventures and challenges of aging and who are living their lives with vibrance and purpose. I'm your host, Nicole Christina, psychotherapist, writer, and fellow Zestful Ager. I want to invite you to my brand new free webinar, Zestful Aging. Here's how you do it. Many of my clients tell me that they're stretched too thin with too many demands upon them. They are just worn out. In my brand new webinar, I teach simple and sensible habits that will significantly improve your life now and help you age with vibrance and resilience. But it's important to start now. Don't wait until your body's distress signals go from a whisper to a scream. If you've followed me at all, you know I'm not about restrictive diets or boot camps. I believe life can be challenging enough. Let's appreciate our bodies and minds for the miraculous systems they are and take the time to take care of ourselves. Self-care pays big dividends now and in the future. And being well ourselves is the only way we can help those we love. And if you sign up now, I will send you my super Zestful Aging checklist, which I designed so you have clear guidelines right at your fingertips. The webinar is free. You can sign up at NicoleChristina.com. And as always, I appreciate your feedback. Well, I have my Jack Russell Terrier Sparky right beside me and my coffee in my hand. So let's begin. Today I'm talking to Paula Harer, and Paula was married for more than 30 years before packing up one day and moving to a one-room loft apartment with her dog, Red. She was in shock at what her life had become, and she had no idea how to start over. Slowly, she started writing, and eventually she created her own website, startingover@60.com, and her new life began to take shape. As she wrote about being over 60, getting divorced, and her loneliness, she began to hear from other women from around the world who were facing the same issues that were universal to single women 50 and over. Eventually, there was a shift in Paula's mindset when one of her daughter's friends said to her, "How are you doing, Mrs. Harer? It seems like you are kind of killing it." And she was right. Welcome to the show, Paula.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
You know, you talk about people really resonating with your message, women really resonating with your message. Did that surprise you when you left your marriage?
It did. I can honestly say that I had no expectations. I didn't have good or bad. I just didn't know what to expect when I became single. And when I started writing, I began writing really out of being a little bit of a sad sack, I would say, having some really lonely times, and just kind of started writing it down. And as I did that, and as I shared it with people, other women were responding in ways that really shocked me. There were so many women reaching out to me saying, "I'm lonely, I'm depressed, I hear what you're saying, I get how you feel." And I didn't expect to feel that way myself. I felt like I would just move ahead easily. I'm kind of a take charge girl. And, once I got over this a little bit, I was just going to soar. And that was not the case. And I could then realized that other women were feeling that that was not the case as well for them.
I see. What were you mentally preparing to leave your marriage and sort of making some plans and saying, well, it could look like this, it could look like that, or was it a fairly abrupt end?
It was not abrupt. And I can tell you that I really was not ever in a good marriage, but I had three, wonderful, perfect children, and I had made the commitment that I was going to stay in the marriage forever. It just became such that I couldn't do it. There, there were just issues with infidelity with my husband and some other things that it was clear that I wasn't going to stay. So I did make the decision to leave. Still, it took me almost a year from that point where I really made a decision to walk out the door. I think I made a decision and then I waited to see if anything would change. And it didn't, and it didn't, and it didn't until finally I said, okay, it really, really is not going to change. But I felt like I was prepared. I took some time. I thought about what it was going to look like. I started looking for an apartment and I found that apartment. But I really think that all along I thought there was going to be some, strike of lightning that said, this is not going to happen. You're going to stay married. This is all going to work out. I knew it wasn't, but you just have to, I had to kind of plow through it a little bit.
We talk about transitions in this time of life, and
Yeah.
it can't be overstated what kind of a transition it is to walk out of a 30-year marriage.
I was a fully married woman. I don't know how else to say that. I know that sounds comical almost, but I was all in. And even over the years as things were bad, I was all in. And I think that I thought that if I was all in, that I would make it work, period. And so I believe it took me a long time to realize that just because I was going to make it work didn't
There were
mean that
two
we were going to
people
make it
in
work.
the
Yeah.
relationship, right? Oh my
Right.
goodness.
So I tell this story, and this is exactly how it is. I looked around for apartments, and really they all look like the apartments that I lived in college. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, I am going backward 30 years. And then I looked downtown. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I looked downtown and I found this 1,000 square foot, one room loft apartment, brick walls, concrete floor, in kind of a small tucked away industrial building. And I was in. And once I did that, once I walked into that place, I could see myself there. I could see a way to fit my adult children in when they visited, even though it was small. I could visualize my life there. That was a big change. And I signed that lease, and that was a huge step. But it was definitely having to see myself in a space before I could really visualize myself actually leaving. I want to say I had a very affluent lifestyle, lived in a big old house in a big old neighborhood, with a big old pool and a big old golf course and all the trimmings you can imagine. I was luckily enough to have those. So I knew I was stepping back. Monetarily, I didn't mind that, but I couldn't quite step back. I don't know how to describe that, in lifestyle. I didn't want to see myself kind of sitting in a room eating ramen noodles for the rest of my life. And when I found this little loft, as small as it was, I
It
could
had
see
some
myself.
style. It sounds like it had some style.
It did.
Yeah.
It was me. And so the truth is that I still had about 3 or 4 months to wait until that was ready. And that gave me some time to kind of start packing things up, to see myself in a different light, to move forward. I told very few people because I did not tell my husband. And so one day he pulled out to go to work, and I I make a joke. He pulled out and drove away. I pulled up my budget rental truck, got my stuff moved out, got the dog, and before he came back, I was gone. For me, that was the only way I could do it. I just couldn't face all of that. It had been so negative and so dirty for so long that I knew I was leaving. I didn't need to face anymore. My children knew I was leaving. My maybe 5 or 6 or 7 closest friends knew I was leaving. And really, by 6 o'clock at night, I was sitting in this new apartment. It was a jolt, to say the least. But there was a period of time where it was exciting. I had a new place. I was unpacking. I lived downtown. I was walking my dog around the state house, and it was very exhilarating. And then it settled in. I think when winter came, it really settled in that, oh man, I am on my own. All of my friends are married, honestly, for the most part. I have 1 or 2 friends who are single, and they're very close friends. But, over the years, when your friends become your kids' friends' parents, etc., my friends were married. And while they were all super supportive and all invited me to do everything with them, I was so lucky. Come Sunday or come Saturday night when they're doing things on their own, I was by myself. So it was rough, definitely.
Just you and your dog.
And Red. Yeah.
I bet Red was helpful in some ways.
I actually had to realize that when I moved down there, I was kind of physically beat up, and my dog kind of started chewing the hair off his paw, and because he had another dog that he lived with I took one and my husband took the other. And I looked at him and realized that we were both really struggling. We were doing it together, but we would sit on the couch together, and I would think, oh, this is a pitiful way to go.
oh my goodness. Yeah, so it was like exhilarating and liberating and great and new, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness,
Bam.
Where am I?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So anyway, time helps us get over those things, and that was probably during that winter was when I started writing, and that just seemed to help me, and it seemed to help others a little bit.
So how did it go? You started a blog at first?
I did. I started typing and showed it to a few friends who showed it to some of their friends, and they liked it. They were interested in it. So I actually went to a woman who I met who developed websites, and I said, I don't have any money, but I will write content for you if you will develop my site. And that's how I got started.
Resourceful.
It worked out. I had been a journalism major, although I had never worked as a journalist. I had worked in advertising in kind of my first life. And so I was able to just write some content, and that helped me feel a little bit more comfortable about that. She developed a beautiful website for me, and I just started writing and putting those posts up, and women seemed to respond.
And what did they say about your writing? What did they respond?
The biggest part of that was that everyone who responded kind of said, wow, I know how you feel. And I was shocked at that. Or they would say, what you're writing is what I'm feeling. And I suppose that was probably the most important thing. What they were relating to what I was writing.
You were helping each other.
It really did help both of us. There were people I ended up corresponding with a little bit because we would kind of commiserate a little bit back and forth.
So this went on for a while, and were you working outside the home and writing, or how was it in the beginning?
I was not. I had a business that I sold in the first few months that I was single. It was a business that I was not good at. I hated it. I think I thought that if I became a different person, my husband might like me a little bit more. And
Mm,
come to find out, that wasn't true. But
mm-hmm.
so I was really, I was finishing up uh, with that business sale and sitting in my one room apartment, starting to write and kind of seeing what direction I would go. And it was very isolating, that one
Mm-hmm.
room, that not really having somewhere else to go. And
Mm-hmm.
I was
In the
talking,
winter, yeah.
yeah, it can, I used to joke that I would get up, take a shower, get dressed, put my makeup on, walk 5 feet, and sit down at my desk.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, honestly, I could be in my apartment for 5 days and no one would know I
I
was still
see.
there.
Yep.
So I have had a friend who told me about an office sharing uh, situation that she was in that was not very expensive. There were about 5 or 6 women who were all in different businesses. And I ended up getting a desk space there. While I wasn't earning money, I really did it more for a place to go
Mm-hmm.
and a place to kind of get ideas from other women about business, etc. And that was great. That was probably the biggest change for me when I started living on my own and working kind of out of there, was to get that office space, that desk space
Mm-hmm.
where there were other women there. There were other people walking around offices. There was a little restaurant in the office, etc. It
Mm-hmm.
just allowed me to get up and go somewhere every day.
I see. And maybe also the idea that this is real. What you're doing is legitimate. And,
Yeah,
it's not, you're just not sitting on your couch in your jammies, with your
yeah,
laptop, but that you are a professional woman now.
yes. Even money or no money aside, it was allowing me to kind of feel that way and to decide whether this was going to whether I was going to be able to have a real business out of this or whether this was just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, did it feel kind of like little by little coming out of the darkness, or was it more, a jagged line of feeling better, feeling bad again,
Yeah.
feeling, yeah. How does it play? How did it
Yeah.
play out for you?
That is really how it plays out. And that can be, 5 times a day. That can be feeling good, going to lunch with a friend, going to the office, not having anywhere to go in the evening, feeling bad. It went up and down constantly. And I was in the negotiations of my divorce, which
Mm,
were ugly as well. And so there was a lot of I don't know that I would call it depression, but there were a lot of ups and downs, and
mm.
it hasn't been all rosy, that's for sure.
What got you through that, Paula? Those really tough times.
I don't know. I think I think I've always had a good amount of optimism. And when I was in my marriage, I always had hope that my marriage was going to, end up surviving. I didn't hope that I would be madly in love and it would be perfect, but I always felt like maybe at the end of the day, we would decide, you know what, this was really the way to go all along. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I I feel like I always had some hope that
Mm-hmm.
that this was really going to be the way to go. But I have to say that has taken me. It's probably taken me 3 years to feel like, okay, it is okay to be single and be in my 60s, and I may live a life exactly like it is now for the rest of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to get okay with that.
Mm-hmm. And was part of getting okay with it hearing other women, communicating with other women, and getting feedback about sort of taking similar journeys?
Yes. Uh, uh, I started to meet women. I decided that it was important to make some friendships with single women who were looking for other things to do also. That was really where I started. I certainly didn't start with dating or, looking for men or anything like that. I found that I felt like it would be important to make some single friends who wanted to be social. I had some single friends who were not very social. They're a little more couch potatoes, and that's not who I am. It wasn't who I was before I was married or during my marriage, and certainly not now. I also worked very hard, and I write a lot about this. I worked very hard to make new friends in my new life. I live downtown in an area that's very has a lot of residences and has a lot of restaurants, and so I had to kind of force myself to go down the street by myself. I would sit at a bar in one of the restaurants and get dinner by myself, and talk to the bartender about the neighborhood, and maybe he would introduce me to some people who lived 2 blocks away, and then they'd say, oh, well, there's this organization for downtown residences. And okay, I would go to every opening of a garage door if I was invited.
That's brave though. Not everybody wants to do that.
You have to do that, in my opinion. That has been golden to me. And I talk about that on the website all the time. It's proactive. You cannot sit there and hope that somebody will find you and help you kind of build your social life back up. I had to be really proactive. I ran into a couple of people who I had known before, and they said, oh, you're down here. You should do this, or you should go to that, or you should meet these people, or, our neighbors are having a dinner party this night. Why don't you come? But I had to do it. I was lucky that people suggested things like that to me, but it really had to come from me. And not all of it was that fun. I mean,
I would imagine. I mean, I can imagine the possibility of you being invited to a party and you being the only single person.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What was that like?
It's not that fun. Sometimes I would think, yay, I get to go home by myself. But no, not really that fun. And not, as I say, I did everything. It was everything but the kitchen sink I did to make some new friends and to find some new organizations, or to just meet some different types of people from what were in my life before to add to the life I had. And then now I find that there are some of those organizations or some groups that really I don't have time for anymore, and they might not have been the right fit for me. But believe me, at the time, that was critical, whether it's exercise classes, whether it is I live downtown, so there are events happening that are free. So I was there, and I would invite other friends to do the same if I needed to.
So there was, it sounds like some of it was difficult, but in general, there was effort involved, that you had a goal of making new friends and you had to work.
Yes, I did. One of the best things that I did a few months after I moved downtown, I invited many of my old friends and many of my new friends to my new apartment to a holiday party. And that ended up to be a real blast, because here I had my suburban married friends come down and see my new tiny place, and I had my urban neighborhood friends coming
Your
to
hipsters.
meet my hipsters coming to meet my old friends and seeing my place as well. And that ended up to be a really fun event, and I think it showed my new neighbors that, oh, look, she's fun too. Like, she might be a little old single lady, but she's fun.
I'm just trying to imagine how it must have been to be in both your new life and your old life, kind of one foot in each as those friend
Yeah,
groups were there. How that must have been really interesting.
it was. And it still is. I have friends that don't come down to my place downtown. I've now moved, just this past summer, I moved to a larger, I bought a condo and moved just maybe a half a block away from where I was, but I actually have bedrooms and separate rooms where people can visit. But some people don't like to come downtown and park, or don't come if I invite them to do something, won't come down here. And so we probably don't see each other as much as we used to. And I'm always flattered when they invite me out to their places out in my old neighborhood, and I go because I really appreciate that people keep me top of mind. When I'm in a separate life now, I'm in a separate lifestyle.
How interesting. What a transformation. Are there any particular groups that you want to tell our listeners who may be going through a similar situation that you found helpful?
There are a couple of groups. I have just joined a group called the Transitions Network, and I know you had Susan Collins
I
on.
did, yes.
I saw that she had done one of your podcasts, and I think that's an interesting group. Now, it is not necessarily all single, but it's a nice mixture of women who are all kind of in our age group, and they are their lifestyles are transitioning. And then with that, there are some offshoots of interests. And so like there's a writing group, and I think there's a movie group, and you can find some women, single or not, who have similar interests. I still belong to a book club out with women who are in the area where I used to live, and it's been a nice introduction to me, but it's not my same lifestyle, and I don't get there as often as I feel like I should. So that part in and of itself is interesting. Um, I probably
I'm,
don't go to my old church as much as I used to, just because, and that's probably a combination of the kids being grown up and gone, and it's not right in my neighborhood. I joined the Downtown Residents Association because that's a social group, plus I get to learn about my area around me. There's another group that I had joined before I became single, and it really was critical to keeping me afloat mentally while I was part of this, while I was going through this, and it's called NAWBO. It's the National Association of Women Business Owners. It's not that it's a single women's group or an older women's group, but those are the women who had the shared office space. And I would reach out and say, oh, I'm trying to figure this out. Oh, you should talk to so-and-so. It was a very supportive group, even though it's not necessarily for single women my age. So I would tell anyone, join some different groups that you think will help you figure out kind of what you're looking for. And if they work, great. And if they don't, there's no harm in trying things that aren't your particular, that aren't necessarily part of your niche. Yeah.
I'm curious whether you became somewhat of a heroine to some of your older friends
I don't know.
from the old neighborhood.
I I would say that I know of women who had no idea of what my life was like as a married person, and were maybe surprised and proud of me for leaving all that. Um, there were women who did know. there were women who did know of my situation and were proud of me for leaving that. It's not easy to leave money. I will just be as blunt as I
Sure.
can about
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
We all have our own lifestyles, and I knew when I left mine that my lifestyle would change forever. And I liked my lifestyle.
What's not to like?
Right.
Having a pool. And are you familiar with the book? It's been around for a while, and it's one of these books that's kind of a sleeper, but it's called Cutting Loose: Why Women Who End Their Marriages Do So Well
No.
by Ashton Applewhite. It's a real gem, and it talks about, there's this idea that if women and their marriages, they're going to be, your idea of sitting in an apartment with a bare light swinging, eating your ramen, out of
Right.
a cup, a styrofoam cup. And she talks about she really challenges those notions, and gives these descriptions of women who, some of them come from money. And I remember in one of the little vignettes, a woman said, she'd come from money, and she said she'd rather sleep in a tent than go back to the marriage that was loveless.
I know. That's the truth. I wish I could say that the money didn't enter the picture. It obviously did. And probably if we had not had such a lovely lifestyle, maybe I would have left it earlier. I don't know. I definitely wanted my children to have an intact family all the way through. I was very dedicated to that fact, or to that dream for my children. My parents had been divorced, and so I just didn't want that for my children. That is probably bigger than the money piece. But the money piece is real. And especially when you think about my age, my husband will retire in a couple of years. And that gravy train, is really gone at some point. The older we are as we retire, or as we get divorced, kind of cuts down on the time that we are looking at any spousal support, if there is such a thing.
I see.
And so, when we were negotiating to end the marriage, that was a big piece of it. I only have X amount of years to get any help or any support from my marriage, from my husband. And probably if we had done it when I was 50, I would have had 20 years of that, versus 5 or so. Anyway, that's an aside. But, I think the
Something to
older
think
we
about,
are
yeah.
when we get divorced, if that's what's coming, it can look a little bit bleak. And I had to be ready for that, get my mind straight, and accept what that could look like. I don't think it. I feel fine about my financial picture, but it's not what it was. And I don't think for anyone, any woman my age who leaves a marriage, if there was substantial income on one side of it, it's clear that you're not going to have that. So you need to get that straight in your head, really straight, or else you'll just have one more thing to feel sorry for yourself about.
Is your writing still centered now on leaving the marriage, or are you writing about other themes now?
It's really not about leaving the marriage anymore. What I would say about my writing, and I've probably been doing it now for about 3 years. I kind of, played for about a year, or a year and a half, and then really I treated it like a business. It has not been a business up to this point, but I've treated it like one. And so I did it as I was feeling what I was feeling. So if you go back and look at at things I wrote when I very first started. I wrote about crying all night. I wrote about, being lonely, wishing I had someone to travel with, whatever that was. And then I progressed, and you can probably see that writing progress from feeling always unhappy to being unhappy 90% of the time, and then 80, and also maybe starting to feel some uplifting moments where I didn't have any of those for a while. So you would really see, if you wanted to read through that, kind of the transition that my life has gone through. I guess I would call it a transformation. And there are lots of factors that have contributed to that. The website has been 100% writing for forever since I started doing it. And now I will be transitioning it a little more into more, I don't like to say coaching because I'm not a coach, and I don't feel like one at all. But I have really paid attention to things that work and don't work when you are single and 50, 60, 70 and beyond. I've paid attention to what seems some steps you can take. As I said, meeting the people in your neighborhood, going to events, etc. I've really kind of tried to curate lots of ideas for other women to try. And so that my site will actually relaunch a little bit differently in about mid-November, toward the end of next week, on really offering women more insight into things that they can do now to start to improve their lives.
So it started as a way for you to get through some of your own pain and loneliness. And then you got feedback that it was actually really helpful. And now it's really taken a shift where it doesn't sound like you need it for comfort or support, but you're actually coming from it in a very different way now, saying, listen, I've done this, I figured it out, and now I want to pass it on.
Yes, I have tried to take my focus away from me, and I've really started listening and talking and working with other women, listening to what their issues are, listening to some things that they have done that have really worked for them, and turning those around into pieces, little chunks that I can offer women that they might try, and that might better their lives if they're with whatever issues they're struggling with. Excuse me. Obviously we have one piece that I know that I am going to be focusing on moving forward, and I have been focusing on, it seems like for the last few months, is confidence. I feel like that issue, that a lack of confidence, is pervasive among single women my age, and really all women my age. All of the things that start to take the toll on our confidence do that. They take a toll. They wear us down a little bit. And it's not just issues about being single. It's body image, and I can't hear anything, and I can't, my feet hurt if I can't wear high heel, or if I wear high heels, and just kind of lots of pieces that bring our confidence down. And I try to offer some ways to just kind of refocus yourself a little bit and gain a little bit of self-confidence. And I'm telling you, it makes all the difference.
It sounds like there's this theme of fighting ageism. If you can't wear high heels, are you still attractive? If your hearing isn't as good, are you still useful? Some of these things sound like they have a lot to do with how our bodies change and how society sees us.
And I feel like not only how society feels us, but how we feel about ourselves. I was working with a group of women for about 8 weeks, and we would get on a call every Sunday night, and I would pick a topic and kind of talk about it a little bit. They would put their 2 cents in, or, we would talk about different issues that they were having. And what really got me started on confidence was that I had been at a wedding, by myself at a wedding on a Saturday night, longtime friend, and I was, of course, at the table. I always say the table where the old neighbor's daughter is at the table. And maybe, maybe the hairdresser, the mom's hairdresser is at that table.
Sort of the secondary character.
Right. Right. And I always know there's always a sorority sister of the mom at that table. Anyway, no. I'm at the table, and it's actually the father of the bride. I'm there with the people that he grew up with. And so I'm sitting there, and I am tugging at my blouse, and my skirt is too tight, and I am feeling terrible about myself. Go home and just forget it. And so the next day I was going somewhere, and I put on something new, and I thought, holy cow, I look like $1 million. And I was exactly the same person that I had been, who was struggling with her Spanx the night before. And I thought, the lack of confidence that just that outfit that I wore to the wedding gave me, I thought about that in contrast to how I was exactly the same size the next morning and put this other thing on and thought I was the hottest thing, on 2 legs. And the only difference was how I felt about it. It had nothing to do with the way I looked. The mother of the bride said, "Oh, I love that skirt you had on." You know what? It just had nothing to do with reality. It all had to do with my perception of myself. And so the truth is, that is what confidence is. It's your posture. It's how you feel about yourself. It's whether you're wearing flats or heels, that you think you look great, or you think you're rocking it. And I don't want anyone to think I'm talking about all looks, because I'm not. But it is definitely a posture. It is definitely an attitude. I talk a lot about trying to prepare yourself when you're going to an event or to something where you're going to lack confidence, so that you can fake it if you need to. You can appear to be super confident, even if you may be melting a little bit inside. Yeah. So
these are really practical suggestions for women who are in a new life.
Yeah, I think so. I want every woman, married or single, to live all the way through, to live all the way through to the end, not kind of end it at 65 and start and I have a friend who I don't think has ever worn anything but black leggings for maybe the last 5 years. And of course,
and she doesn't do yoga.
No, yeah. She has 18 pairs of yoga pants and has never done a lick of yoga. To not let yourself just kind of curl in, but to blossom with everything that comes with aging, even the bad. Just learning how to deal with it, learning how to cope, learning how to have the best life you can all the way through. And if you are able to do that, you gain confidence from that. That's for sure.
That's That sounds really helpful. Are there resources you'd like to share? You talked a little bit about the Transition Network and the NABO in terms of this confidence and sort of blossoming even with the bad. Are there books or movies or anything that has been inspiring to you that you want to pass on to our listeners?
There is a book that I found very interesting called The Confidence Code, and I'm sorry I don't have the author's name on the tip of my tongue. I actually learned about it through through a training that a friend of mine does. It's on confidence, but it's really for women in middle management positions who are not applying for upper management jobs, whether it's in their company or in any other companies for other jobs. And she trains really on gaining enough confidence to go for those higher jobs, those higher wages, those more responsibility, those C-suite jobs. So I had looked at that book because I think she had actually given me a copy from one of her trainings, and it has a post-it on just about every page. And so that one's called The Confidence Coach.
Is it coach or code?
I'm sorry, code.
Code,
CODE.
okay.
I just heard this woman speak at actually the Transitions Network here in Columbus, and her name is Joy Laverde.
And I'm going to be interviewing her in a few weeks.
Right?
Yes.
You know, I can honestly say, her book, she has a new book out, and it is kind of how to plan for your old age. And that's not the title. I'm sorry, I don't have it sitting on my desk. But so I was going to her talk, and honestly, I thought, okay, I can make up my grocery list for tomorrow while she's talking.
Sure.
I have to admit that. I just thought, I'm not sure why I signed up for this, but I'm just going to go because I'm so interested in women and aging. And her talk was fabulous. She will be such a great guest for you. And I feel like much of what she talked about was really preparation for aging, preparation for how you're going to age, how you're going to live. And to me, that preparation gives you confidence.
I see.
Instead of wringing your hands all the time about where am I going to live or how am I going to live, etc. I think that preparing yourself gives you the confidence to know, well, here's what I'm going to do if this happens and this happens. I talk about that when I talk about confidence, 10 steps for more confidence, let's say. I talk about being prepared if you're going to an event where you know you're going to be at that bad table. Be prepared so you can feel confident enough to maybe, lead the conversation or get something going. Prepare yourself for that. She talks a lot about preparing for old age, how you're going to live, how many years your money is going to last, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that can give you just another layer of confidence that your life's going to be okay. You don't need to worry. You need to worry about health issues, et cetera, but that you are confident that your life is going to look good all the way through.
I see. That makes a lot of sense.
She has... I think this one is her second book that she has just put out, but I found her to be very interesting and to have good ideas as to how you might be able to handle your own situation. So much so that I took a friend with me who was saying she thought it was going to be the same, that was not going to be very exciting.
Right.
And we both, when we left, said, holy cow, we were so wrong. Yeah.
And how often does that happen?
No,
Usually it's the other way,
I
right?
know. This was a pleasant surprise. That's the truth.
Oh,
Yeah,
she has
it
a
was.
great reputation, and it's the reason I'm not interviewing her for a while is because she was doing 10 keynotes in a row.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can believe that. She's got some good information. She really does.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'd like to give our listeners a place to learn more about you and read some of your writing and learn more about how to develop their confidence. What's the best place to reach you?
Sure. It's easiest to reach me. You can go my email, and anyone is welcome to email me, is Paula at startingoverat60.com. And that is SIXTY, not the number.
Okay.
And so the site is called startingoverat60.com. And by the end of next week, I believe I'll launch at the end of next week, I will be launching some new, a couple of new programs. There's a one-on-one program. I'm building a community of what I call Starting Over at 60 Sisters, where I will put out monthly content specifically for those women, and those will all launch on at the end of next week. I will also, my website will always contain the content that it contains, and I will continue to write for the website. I'm just adding some different layers to the website, and just to what I talk about.
Wow, it sounds like as you evolve, there's more and more you want to share with other women.
Absolutely. I think that this can be, and you can certainly speak to this, I think this is a much better time in life than I ever expected it to be. And I don't know that I would have, I can certainly say I would not have been saying that if I weren't single now. My life was going in a different direction, and while I was happy that my children's family was intact and that they would live happily ever after, I hoped, I was not. And it did take me, after I left the marriage, it did take me, a few years to figure out that actually this is better. My life is better. And I want women my age to really feel like their life can continue to get better. It didn't end at a certain age, or it didn't dry up, or you
Well,
didn't
for
miss the boat.
for you, it's been an absolute rebirth.
It really has. And I know that there are plenty of women who are in much more dire straits than I am. But I feel like everybody can continue to improve their lives, even in the tiniest way. I just want women to continue to try to move forward, even when it seems impossible.
Yeah, that you're working to be an inspiration and saying, listen, it's not always easy, but I've done it and it was worth it.
That's exactly right. And, when in listening to Joy speak, our children will live to maybe 120. Their children will live to 150. I hope to live, into my 90s. I'd like to be around for much longer. So I'm really looking at, possibly 1/3 of my life, at least, at least 20% of my life. But I'm looking at another third of my life, I hope, and I want that to continue to climb rather than to decline.
Yeah, that's a theme that I've been hearing, that it's a whole new opportunity, that it's so different than maybe in our parents' time when it was retirement,
absolutely.
and now we're going to kind of, slowly disintegrate.
Yeah.
This is more of it's a door.
That's a
It's
good way to put it.
it's a whole different orientation.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I think my listeners are really going to appreciate what you've shared today. I think it's as you described, you get people saying, yes, this is exactly how I feel. And it's so important to feel like you're not alone.
That's true. That's true. I do think that there are so many. Let me just say this. You asked me about are there groups that I belong to, and I mentioned a couple. I also, I told you that I put together kind of a group of 6 women that we would talk on Sunday nights. Um,
Mm-hmm.
some in my hometown, some in my current town, and we all would talk on Sunday nights on a specific topic, and that really became a really good group. We've taken a break and we're going to start back up after the holidays. But that could be any group of people. The other thing that I just did, and I'll let you know how it turns out. I'm starting a meetup of single women 50 and over. And that's just here in my hometown. That's just kind of for
Mm-hmm.
a happy hour once a month or
Mm-hmm.
so. And I think anyone who was feeling like she is looking for some new friends or some new introductions or a new way to go, you
Mm-hmm.
can look at meetups. I'm actually going to one tonight that I had never seen before, which is Women Over 60. Um, I'm going to try it out. It has 160 members, but
Wow.
there are only, I think, maybe 8 or 10 who go to one event or another. It looks like they do some
Mm-hmm.
things like go to movies, and they'll do a lunch once in a while and maybe a happy hour. But meetups, I feel like are can be very helpful. I like to knit. There are knitting meetups. There
Mm-hmm.
are meetups of people who go to movies. There are meetups of people who speak French. Honestly, I think if there might be meetups for women who own dogs named Red. I mean, it gets very specific,
I
and
saw that.
it's
Yes.
it's they're really helpful, I think. You go, and honestly, if it was a drag, you're out maybe an hour. You're out, not very much. They're not really out anything, I guess is what I'm saying. It doesn't hurt to try new things. And
Have
that
you,
is
yeah,
really the
have you
theme.
heard of the podcast Brunch Club?
No, I don't know that.
It's I interviewed Adela on early on. It feels like years ago, but it wasn't even a year. She has done this club that is growing exponentially, and it's so brilliant, and I'm sure
Huh.
they have one in Columbus. What you do is you all listen to a particular podcast, and then you meet for brunch and you talk
Wow.
about it, and it's not a huge group, but
Yeah.
you have something specific to talk about, and you're in and you're out. You have a nice brunch,
Yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
leave, and it doesn't have to be, a day long commitment. You don't have to do anything exhausting or time consuming, and it's really fun because you get to talk about the same thing. Everyone has some ideas about it, but she picks the topics. So everyone's doing the same thing, and it's
Yeah.
it's international. It's all over the world now.
Wow. I am going to look that up immediately. That sounds
Yeah.
like a great idea.
Yeah,
It
it's and she's lovely, and if you want to you can listen to it's early on my list on
uh-huh.
iTunes, but I tease her now on social media that I knew her when
Yeah.
because
I
she was
bet.
just written up in Forbes magazine. So,
Really?
yeah. So that's a really lovely thing for people that's sort of easy, not a lot of stress, not a lot of
Yes.
emotional commitment.
Yes. I think that uh, is how these meetups kind of are a positive experience. If you
Hmm.
like it, great, you do it again. And if you don't like it, you just don't go back, or you can't
That's
go
right.
sometimes. So it's very loose, but
Hmm.
it's it all takes proactive energy on
Hmm.
someone's part to find these things and see if they're a fit.
Well, I would also say expect to feel uncomfortable. That it's not going to be everyone's going to put the red carpet out for
No,
you.
no.
That there will be times where you feel a little uneasy and maybe think to yourself, what was I thinking? And this is awful.
Yeah.
But that it's all part of sort of growing into your new life.
Right, right. And I agree. I agree. No, I can't wait to look up that brunch club. That sounds great.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's
So there are
a lot of
lots
fun.
of resources for women to try. They just have to, get out there and do it.
Yep. Paula, it's been so lovely speaking with you today.
Hey, I appreciate it.
I think people are going to really love what you have to say and really appreciate your inspiration. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to be on the podcast. I have loved it.
Thank you so much for joining us on Zestful Aging. If you like the podcast, please share with some of your friends. I love to hear from my listeners. Send me an email at NicoleChristina.com. And please consider becoming a patron of the show. You will get access to exclusive bonuses, and you will be part of the Zestful Aging community. Keep us going strong. Go to patreon.com/zestfulaging. See you next time for another episode of Zestful Aging.